Poor girl sells artwork to fund her chemo, until a billionaire appears and changes everything. Lila Thompson had always found solace in colors. At 12, when life had already begun to feel unfair, she discovered that a brush in her hand could speak what words never could. Her little apartment in a crumbling neighborhood smelled of turpentine and hope. Every canvas told a story of dreams she wasn't sure she'd ever live, of places she hadn't seen, and people she longed to meet, but life, as it often does, had dealt her a cruel hand. At 17, Lila was diagnosed with leukemia. The doctors were kind but firm, explaining that chemotherapy would be her only chance. Her parents, hardworking yet barely making ends meet, could not afford the expensive treatment. The bills were piling up, and time was slipping through their fingers like sand. One rainy afternoon, Lila sat on the worn-out floor of her tiny bedroom, staring at her canvases. She had never thought of selling her art, not until now. Desperation had a way of turning fear into action. With trembling hands, she picked her best painting, a portrait of a woman with eyes full of fire, and placed it on the edge of the local flea market table. She didn't know what to expect, only that she had to try. The day was long, and the market was bustling. People passed by, some glancing at her work, others ignoring it entirely. Each time someone walked past without a second look, her heart sank a little more. By the afternoon, only a few coins had found their way into her small jar. She was about to pack up when a man in a tailored suit stopped in front of her table. He was tall, with silver hair and an aura of calm authority, and his eyes lingered on her paintings longer than anyone else had. "These are remarkable," he said, his voice deep and sincere. "Did you paint these yourself?" Lila nodded, barely able to speak. "Why, yes, sir. I'm trying to raise money for my treatment." Her words came out in a rush, fragile as glass. The man crouched down to her level and studied her eyes. "You have talent, extraordinary talent. What's your name?" "Lila," she whispered. "I'm Edward Grant," he said. "And Lila, I think your story deserves more than a flea market. How about I help you?" Lila's hands shook. I don't understand. You don't even know me." Edward smiled, but it was gentle, not condescending. "Sometimes, you don't need to know someone to see their worth." By the end of that day, Lila's world had shifted. Edward arranged for her artwork to be displayed in a prominent gallery. Overnight, the paintings that had once been overlooked on a rainy market street became the center of attention. People were captivated by her vivid colors and the emotion behind each brushstroke. Her story spread, and soon, orders for commissions poured in. More importantly, the proceeds from the exhibitions covered her medical bills in full. For the first time in months, Lila felt a lightness in her chest that had nothing to do with her illness. Her chemotherapy sessions were no longer a source of dread, they were battles she could face with courage, knowing she wasn't alone. But Edward's impact went beyond financial help. He became a mentor, encouraging her to refine her technique and explore her creativity further. He introduced her to other artists, collectors, and patrons. Lila discovered a world she had only seen in books, filled with people who appreciated the soul behind the canvas as much as the colors. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of chemotherapy, Lila found herself painting in her small studio. She was creating a piece inspired by the kindness she had received, a girl in the rain, her face illuminated by a warm, golden light. Edward walked in quietly and stood behind her, watching her work. "You've come a long way, Lila," he said softly. She paused and looked up at him. "I couldn't have done it without you." Edward shook his head. "No. You did this yourself. I just gave you the chance to shine. That's all anyone ever really needs." Months turned into a year, and Lila's health improved remarkably. The treatments were tough, leaving her weak and exhausted, but she faced each day with determination. Her art had not only funded her recovery, it had given her a purpose, a reason to keep fighting. She began teaching art classes to children in her neighborhood, hoping to inspire others as she had once been inspired. At one of the gallery exhibitions marking her first anniversary of recovery, Lila looked around at the crowd, collectors, friends, and strangers who had become part of her journey. She spotted Edward in the corner, quietly observing her, a proud smile on his face. She realized something profound. While the world had been harsh and unfair, kindness had a ripple effect that could change lives. That night, as the gallery lights dimmed and the last guests departed, Edward approached her. "You know, Lila, the world is full of people who could use a little light. Maybe it's your turn to be that light for others." Lila smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with paint or canvas. "I think I will." And so, the girl who had once sold her artwork on a rainy street to survive now stood as a beacon of hope. Her talent, her courage, and the unexpected kindness of a billionaire had intertwined to rewrite her story, a story of survival, transformation, and the undeniable power of generosity. Lila had learned that sometimes, life's darkest moments could give birth to the brightest colors. And with a brush in her hand, she was ready to paint the world anew.